Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today's another episode of Toys I Remember but don't have anymore. And this one is the Ghostbusters. Well, it's actually the real Ghostbusters. Now, it seems weird to call it that because I just consider it Ghostbusters. And this kind of happened around the time when the cartoon came out. Now, there's lots of things about Ghostbusters that I've always loved. I mean, obviously the movies are what started it all. The very first movie with Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson. Great movie. Never could be topped. I mean, they made an attempt at the reboot. It wasn't too bad. I'm not going to say I hated it. It's just, it doesn't have the same charisma that the original Ghostbusters movie had. I think it's just the style of comedy or whatever. Maybe it was just the direction of the movie. I don't know. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it was female. I think it was just the movie just wasn't as good. And I say the same thing about the RoboCop reboot, the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. So it's just, there's a problem when it comes to trying to reboot this stuff. But, I mean, Ghostbusters has a lot of different things. I mean, you can get the Atari game. Ghostbusters on the Atari 2600. Ghostbusters on the Nintendo. Or Ghostbusters on the Sega Master System. I mean, the list goes on. But one of the things that I played with when I was a kid was the real Ghostbusters toys. And so the cartoon came out just after the first movie. I believe it was before the second movie came out, if I'm thinking right. But so the real Ghostbusters was a cartoon, and I believe the reason why it was called the real Ghostbusters was there was actually already a cartoon called Ghostbusters. And it had nothing to do with the movie, the series, or anything. It was a completely different thing. I never watched any of the episodes of it. No idea what it was about. I don't know when it came out, but it did come out definitely before this did. And so I think they had to come up with, what are we going to do? We can't just call it Ghostbusters, so they called it the real Ghostbusters. And, of course, with every cartoon, there has to be toys. And I was super excited about this. When Ghostbusters came out with toys, I was like, no way. I mean, Ghostbusters was like my favorite movie when I was a kid, or one of them. And, I mean, I loved everything about it. I tried to dress up like a Ghostbuster. I tried to do everything Ghostbusters when I was a kid. And, my friends were the same. We were the same. We did a lot of Ghostbuster stuff. So, when the toy line came out, it was natural. We just had to have them. And so they came out with, obviously, the four Ghostbusters. And, they kind of resembled their movie form, but there was a slight difference to each one of them. And I'm not really sure to this day exactly why. I think it's just because, they were afraid maybe in the cartoon, if they drew them more accurate, they wouldn't look, or maybe they would all look the same or something like that. So they kind of gave them all kind of a different look and feel. So you had like Peter Venkman, which kind of looks similar to, himself from the movie. A little bit different hairstyle, but he had the brown hair, the brown eyes look, the same, similar personality in the cartoon. And then you had Ray, which, Ray, everybody knows Ray, the Dan Aykroyd character. They made him a little chunkier, they gave him red hair, a little more playful character. Egon, they really changed him. I mean, they made him a blonde. They gave him these red funky glasses, these little browny red glasses. And, I mean, he was still tall, but whatever. And, of course, Winston, which almost resembled the Winston from the movie. Now, from what I understand, when they made Ghostbusters Part 2, they made them look a little similar to the toy line, which is kind of funny. But I remember grabbing the toys, I didn't have all of them. I only had two of them from the beginning, and that was Peter Venkman, because he was my favorite character. And I remember he came with his proton pack. It had these like crazy little things coming out of it, almost like they were shooting a ray out of the proton pack, out of the gun. And it had a little stick on the back. You turned it and it kind of twirled around so it looked like it was actually shooting something. Awkward though as a toy because it was always attached. You couldn't like take it off. So when you were playing with them, it was kind of awkward. It always had this thing, unless you, I guess, remove the proton pack. And the other figure I had was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which also great character. I mean, it's not a Ghostbusters exclusive character because it's actually from a product line of marshmallows, but they used it in the movie and they had this Stay Puft character. Now, those were the two that I wanted, and those were the two I got. My friends got the other Ghostbusters, so when we were all playing together, we had pretty much the full set. I remember my friend had Slimer, and he came with like a pizza, and he also, I think he had Ray, and you know, my other friends had the other ones, and it was just like we were able to like play together, and we played the whole Ghostbuster scene. Now, obviously, there was a lot more toys that came out for the line. There was the car, which looks really cool. I've actually seen them in flea markets and stuff not even that long ago. But people want quite a bit of money for them, and most of the time they're not in great shape. They're usually missing a door, they're missing some valuable parts to it. They're banged up, they're dirty, they look like they went through, you know, the war zone. And so oftentimes like they're a little bit cheaper because of that. But still, I wouldn't want something that just looks like it was like pulled out of some kid's toy box and in pieces. But that was normal, I guess. Back in the day when we had all these toys, we would throw them in our toy box. We played with them. We crashed them into each other. We didn't care. It wasn't about preserving these things or collecting these things. It was never about that. It was about playing with them. That's the whole point of toys. You know, so now if you think about today, when we try to collect these things, when you can actually find one in mint condition, the value is going to just be like up the roof. So, you know, I can imagine trying to collect all these figures today. It would probably not be cheap. Much like I talked about in the first video of the series, the Centurions, from what I understand, each figure is, you know, quite expensive. I think you're paying close to $100 for a figure. I don't know about the Ghostbusters. I haven't seen any of the figures anywhere. I've seen, like, some of the second generation. They came out with a second generation line where they kind of changed their outfits a little bit. They added some features, some goofy effects where their mouth will open wide, like they're freaking out. So they kind of changed that. And, you know, they just added a little odds and ends. And then they also had these toys that, part of the first generation line, I believe, that dealt with slime. And slime was a big thing. I mean, in the movie, slime was the thing. There's the whole scene where Peter Venkman goes into the library. He finds the slime. He's just like gooey. It's like gross. And, you know, especially the second movie. I mean, the second movie is all about the slime. But in the first line of toys, they actually came out with a slime container you could buy that you played with the toys. And it came with a little ghost inside, a little plasticky ghost thing. And they had these other toy sets where you poured the slime in, and it would spit it out of its nose, spit it out of its mouth. So the one I had, it was kind of this weird thing. It was like, I remember it being like orangey type of thing. If I find a picture, I'll put a picture of it. But you'd pour the slime in there, and you'd push down on it, and it would just ooze the slime out of its nose and everything. I remember actually taking it to school. You know, I guess back in the day, we used to bring our toys to school. And I remember sitting there in the schoolyard playing with it, and one of the lunch teachers I was watching, she was completely grossed out by it. I was like, it was hilarious, because she was just like looking at me like, oh God, why would you want to do that? Like, it baffled her that I was playing with this toy that was spitting out slime out of its nose and stuff. But it was just one of those little funny memories I had of it. There was also these other characters that they kind of added in, and I remember I probably still have them somewhere, and it was like a cop figure, like a police officer figure, and when you pushed a button, his whole face thing fell forward, and he had like a skeleton. I don't know where they got these from, like what they were thinking when they created these. It really didn't. Maybe it was from the cartoon, because I mean, I watched the cartoon as well when I was a kid, but I didn't pay too much attention to the ghosts that were in there. So maybe they took it from there, or maybe they just needed something else. They were like, we already got the 4 Ghostbusters, we got the Slimer, we got the Stay Puft, how can we keep making toys? So I guess they just had to keep creating toys. They had to keep coming up with new ideas. You know, they could re-release them, but it's not like, you know, they could start creating new Ghostbusters. It's not like the Transformers where they can just keep adding new bots to the, you know, the generation. They really were stuck with the 4 figures, and so I guess they had to get creative and come up with all these oddball, goofy things. I remember one was like a grandma or something like that, There's just a lot of that weird stuff. And then outside of the actual toy line, like the figure line, they also had like a toy proton pack. They had a toy PKE meter. I never had any of that stuff. And they even had the fire hall, which I thought really looks cool. I've actually seen a few videos of people who actually still have them, or maybe bought them recently and paid a lot of money. And it's kind of like, you know, the big, huge play set. Most toy lines had at least something like that. I remember Thundercats had one. He-Man had the big Castle Grayskull. So, you know, a lot of the toy sets back then usually had something like this. And so that the firehouse looks really cool, but I can imagine at that point it probably would have been really expensive then, and it would probably be extra expensive today, especially if you were to find one with all its parts in good condition. Because those were always the first things to actually get broken, thrown into the toy box, and forgotten. Or just, you know, played with to death and things just fall apart. Today, I mean, you can actually get the Lego sets that mimic it. I mean, I got the Ecto 1. I've actually did a video, one of my very first few videos that I did on this channel. I actually did the Ghostbuster, what do you call it, the Ecto 1 car, which is really neat. And there's also the fire hall, but that's really expensive. I mean, you get into Lego and everything in Lego is just crazy expensive. But yeah, this was you know, a toy line that I really liked when I was a kid. I didn't get too much into it. I didn't get all the figures. I didn't get, you know, it was kind of like, you know, I played with Peter, he played with Ray, and he played with that. So it was really just you know, something that you get together with your friends and you could actually play the Ghostbusters. Really cool. The figures themselves, I mean, they weren't really well done. I mean, they didn't move. They didn't have all the moving arms and all that stuff. But that didn't matter. And they were kind of an odd height, too. They weren't G.I. Joe figure size, and they weren't like Barbie doll size. They were kind of in that middle thing. But still fun altogether. And it's still Ghostbusters. Anyways, let me know what you think of Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters, the toy line. Did you play with these toys? What did you think of them? And do you still have them? Or do you wish you still had them? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.